If you're going to hire somebody and they're going to call my number illegally, I will.
My most explosive interview so far. 51 minutes of revelation. Without a doubt, West Newman of Cook County, Illinois will shake up the insurance industry. Integrity Marketing Group and its affiliate Family First Life are systematically harassing Americans via offshore call centers that do not obey the rules. The Do Not Call list, the Telephone Consumer Protection Act, regulations of Medicare selling that prohibit cold calling. Family First Life and Integrity don't play by the rules. Integrity Marketing is a consortium of insurance marketers, a 500,000 insurance agents, 6,000 employees, and $20 billion in yearly premium. Mr. Newman, a 34-year-old married man, has received 90 spam calls in one day while averaging 25 calls. Wes is pleading with Integrity Marketing, executives and lawyers to stop this harassment. The implications of Wes's suffering, clear description of the crimes against him, and his legal methods will be far-reaching. The lead fraud that new insurance agents are suffering is directly related to the reckless disregard of the laws that govern telemarketing. Please comment below, like and share, and subscribe to our channel. I believe that we could punish the lawbreakers.
Getting some calls from Integrity Marketing affiliated companies. So it began with some calls from Connection Point. Calls would come in from numbers that were spoofed that you can't call back, you can't interact with once you're off the line. The people would introduce names Medicare Advisory and Medicare Help Center, and they would use those names interchangeably on the call. They would then ask me some questions, try to qualify you, tell you that they were calling about Medicare. One point on the first call of this set, I asked the caller who it was he was calling on behalf of. Who is it that you're trying to transfer me to? And he told me Medicare. Medicare? And he said, yes, we're Medicare, the organization, Medicare. Continued to ask me some questions and then sent me over to, eventually, after a few more calls, I think he sent me over to a company called Medicare Enroll, which I later found out was an Integrity Marketing company. Reached out to them trying to get these calls to stop. They told me, well, they'll try. Maybe they'll do it, maybe they won't try. They'll try to tell me who it was that put me in touch with them, who it was that actually called me so I can maybe get the call to stop or calls to stop. There was no promise, no guarantee. They would try, but they really weren't sure that they could tell me who it was. Fast forward to December, I get another call. In November of last year, I started receiving another vendor. This one was on behalf of or hired by and related to in some capacity Berwick Insurance, which again, I found out later was an Integrity Marketing group. This company, they used the name Medicare Help Center on the call, which is the exact same name that the calls for Connection Point used. They ended up asking me some more qualifying questions, trying to get me in touch with one of their licensed insurance agents. They did so. I was sent over to a lady by the name of Rose. She told me that she works for Berwick. She sent me an email showing that she works for Berwick and that Berwick is an Integrity Marketing company or a company owned or operated by Integrity Marketing. We ended the call. I reached out to a lady by the name of Ryan Pearsall via, I believe I called her, let her know about the issue, let her know, hey, I got this call. They had requested my Medicare card number and things like that. If you're imagining that these calls are going to older folk, if this offshore call center is requesting Medicare card information, it's a little sketchy, at least. You know, who knows what's going on with that information outside of this call. This person gave that number that I provided over to Rose, and they must still have access to it, one would think. Told Ryan about this. Ryan said they shouldn't be doing that. That's not something they're supposed to ask for at that stage. She said that Rose does, in fact, work for them. That is one of their agents she knew of and knew Rose. She would pass that information along to their VP, and then she was going to get back in touch with me. I didn't hear anything from them, so I reached out via email to that VP. His name is Bob Cummins. Reached out to him via email, sent him a detailed, here's what happened on the call, here's exactly what was said. He wrote back letting me know that he's never heard of that company before. They don't make any, I believe he said they don't make any outbound calls of any kind. They don't use third parties to do this. They don't use offshore call centers to make any calls like that. They just don't do that. I believe he even called them, well, it must be a scam. They're scammers that are calling at one point in his email. Later found out that no, in fact, they do use third party call centers to make these calls. I guess was either mistaken or just flat out lied to me in hopes that this is going to go away. He provided a website of a company that he thought might be the responsible party, though they had, as far as I know, nothing to do with the call. I believe it was around that time or maybe shortly before, I had begun reaching out to integrity marketing in an attempt to try to get a resolution to this, to try to get these calls to stop, though they weren't. And throughout this, I'm updating integrity on here's what's going on, here's the calls I'm receiving. They're using these fake names, they're using these fake numbers. I can't get in touch with anybody to actually make the calls stop. They're using multiple fake numbers, so you can't block the numbers either. There's really nothing on my end that I know to do to make this stop from coming in.
Wes, how many of these calls are you getting?
On an average weekday, I get anywhere from about 20 to 30 on average. When Medicare open enrollment is going on, I'm getting closer to 60 a day on just a normal weekday. They slow down over the weekends somewhat. So Saturdays, I might get 5 or 10, Sundays, 2 or 3. They still come in on the weekend.
You're really getting dozens and dozens of calls every day?
Since we have been on this call, I've had 3. I get a fair amount every day, just like this. And they're all using these same generic, I believe all fake or very, the majority are fake names, like senior benefits, Medicare Health Center, Healthcare Department is one that's used all the time, Medicare Health Center. They'll just call themselves Medicare sometimes. If you're a younger person who might just kind of know these tactics, okay, yeah, that's sketchy, but it's not that big of a deal. You know kind of what's going on. But I would imagine that an older person who would qualify for these things may not. And when you're told, it looks like from our records, you qualify for X and we're Medicare. Okay. Yeah, you might think that this is actually Medicare calling you. What's going to happen with that information? What do they actually believe?
Let's go on with your story. I just wanted to make clear that it is dozens and dozens on a daily basis, which seems really strange to me.
I've been reaching out to Integrity. I really wasn't getting any kind of response back for the most part at that point via email. I tried calling. I think I'd left some messages, I believe, with them as well, and just never heard anything back from them in any capacity until I started to just rope in anybody and everybody onto the email chain that I could. It was January 10th. In fact, there it is. January 10th that I got my very first reply back from Integrity, and it was from their chief legal officer, Jane Roth, who finally wrote back saying, hey, they're looking into this. They'll get back in touch. They were taking all the people that I was starting to CC on the email to try to get somebody's attention on this. They were taking them off. They'll reply to me separately. So it took, probably 5 or 6 emails, somewhere in that neighborhood, several calls, talking to several of their affiliates, emails to their affiliates. Nobody wanted to confront this and actually make the calls stop. They let me know eventually, hey, the calls from Connection Point or that went to Connection Point, they have pushed pretty hard to say they weren't from Connection Point. They just at some point entered Connection Point's company. They gave me a company name that had made the calls called Agency Incline, was the lead generator or third-party vendor that had made those calls. So I reached out to Agency Incline, got nothing from them. They just said, we don't make any outbound calls. We don't make any marketing calls, which seems weird for a marketing company to never make any calls. That's what they told me. All-Star BPO was the one that I was told was behind Berwick calls, which is contrary to Mr. Cummins' email. All-Star BPO, I believe, is in the Philippines. I reached out to them via email, Skype, and phone. They didn't respond to any and blocked me on every platform, so I couldn't reach back out to make those calls stop. And I believe I've had one more call from them since, but it was for a different company. They'll still call me, but I can't call them. Then on January 16th, I got a call. It was a Sunday evening, I want to say around 6 or so on a Sunday evening. I get a call from Robert Rogers, who told me he was following up on some final expense insurance I'd wanted, which is news to me. I asked him where he got my information. He said that he's with Mutual of Omaha. He works for Mutual of Omaha, and they had provided him with my information. I had actually been in contact with Mutual of Omaha before and had asked them not to call me either, knew their attorney. So I reached out to him, I believe it was that night or the next day, reached out to their attorney, and their attorney said, we don't have anybody by that name that works for us. He said, let me do some digging. I'll get back to you. He gets back to me and says that Robert Rogers has never received any leads from them as far as he can find. They have no ties to this guy at all. And from what he can tell, this guy works for a company called Your Insurance Group. Do some digging into Your Insurance Group. It's an integrity marketing company. I reached out to Robert Rogers. He says, yeah, I tell people that I work for Mutual of Omaha because I sell some Mutual of Omaha insurance. I'm not real savvy on how the whole insurance industry works with these sorts of calls. It did not seem like Mutual of Omaha was real pleased that they were having their names on any calls by this guy. And Integrity confirmed that, yep, Robert Rogers works for Integrity at one of our companies. He is an employee. So we'll reach out to him regarding what he should be saying. So they did admit that this guy does work for them, that they're associated. So there was more reaching out back and forth.
Which of the Integrity Marketing Group companies did he work for?
It's a company called Your Insurance Group. That's the name of the company. It didn't sound like a real company at first, but it is one of, from what I've seen, it is one of their. On February 1st, I got my very first Family First Life call. I did not think it was a Family First Life call at first. It was another spoof number that came in. You pick up, there's a long silence, there's a beep sound, and then there's somebody on the other end. This person said that they were with State Farm. She was calling from State Farm. She was calling about final expense insurance. I continued to answer some of these qualifying questions to find out why State Farm is calling me. She did not sound like she was actually from State Farm. She sounded like she was an offshore agent. She was not calling from a State Farm telephone number. It did not seem like it was actually State Farm. So I was interested to find out who it actually was. I asked her at one point on the call, so you are with State Farm, correct? She said, yes. I said, and you're going to transfer me to a State Farm licensed agent? She said, yes, it'll be a State Farm agent. I get transferred over to a guy by the name of Michael Williams, who's an FFL agent, or was an agent at that time. Michael starts out the conversation letting me know, I'll send you over my business card and my license information via text. He texted over to me, and I could tell he works for First Family Life. I didn't realize that First Family Life was an Integrity company at that point.
Family First Life.
Yeah, sorry. I'll just call them FFL to keep me, because I do it backwards every time.
We like to do the proper way so they get the proper recognition for their deed. Family First Life.
Yes, Family First Life. FFL, if you will. He was really nice. He was a really nice guy. He was very upfront with me. He let me know, initially, I don't know who it is that actually called you. Let me find out real quick. So while I'm on the phone with him, he looks up the information and tells me that it's a lead vendor called Lead Engine. All one word, Lead Engine. I reached out to them after my call with Michael, reached out to them via phone. He gave me a phone number, and then his two contacts there, Danny and Ty, were the two contacts there that he knew. Ty is the one that picks up the phone. I let him know, look, man, hey, here's what happened. I got this call, spoof number, somebody saying they're from State Farm. They clearly aren't. They transfer me to a company that's not State Farm. I'd like to know where you got my number to call. He lets me know that he's just the support guy there. He doesn't know anything about that. He's just the support guy. He'll have one of the managers there call me back and let me know what's going on. Right after the call, I start really digging into Lead Engine. Turns out Ty is an owner of the company, as is Danny. I think there's only just those two at the company. They immediately blocked my telephone number. I reached out via email. They blocked my email. They reached out to Mr. William and let him know that what he should have done is hang up on me immediately when he realized that I was not happy about the call. He should have hung up on me. He should have blocked my number. He should have, what did they tell him? He should never have told them anything about their company and put me in touch with them. He should never have done that. They let him know that I'm, quote, one of the top guys in this. I don't know what that means other than I answer my phone when somebody calls me, and I'm interested to find out who's actually calling. So if that's a top guy, all right. They've never gotten back in touch with me in any capacity. I've reached out, email, phone, text, their cell phone numbers, their company numbers. They told him that I opted into the call, but despite his request for the opt-in information, they've never provided it to him, never provided it to me, and as far as I know, never provided it to Integrity or their attorneys. At least they've never told me if they have. That was my first foray into Family First Life. I've had other calls from Family First Life from vendors who will eventually transfer you to FFL, where they've said that they are senior benefit. And I've been sent to an agent by the name of Jeremy Love from them. Another senior benefits call where I've gone to Thaddeus Dunbar, who I believe is an FFL agent. I've had responses from the attorney, Jane Rothman, the attorney for Integrity, telling me that because you agreed to have your call transferred, well, we're not responsible. But how can one enforce any kind of DNC request if you don't know who's calling? If you're being told that it's a company called Senior Benefits. I've had just this week, this is Wednesday this week, I've had probably 15 to 20 calls from companies saying they're Senior Benefits. Are they all FFL vendors? Almost certainly not. But how do I know who they actually are unless you play along? If you ask who it is that they're trying to transfer you to, like the State Farm call, they're just going to tell you whatever you want to hear. They're going to tell you whatever gets you to transfer over to that agent. I've had them tell me, your number's on the do not call list. Give us another number. Give us another number to call. You have to give us another number to call. All right, here's another number. They'll transfer you. And they say, well, because you played along, you have nothing to complain about. The call still happened. You still called me. How do I make you actually stop? You can't block the numbers because they don't call from the same number twice. If they do, it's rare. There's no way that I know of to make the calls actually stop. From the interviews that I've seen on this channel from some of the people, they're saying that the CRM isn't being updated. In fact, I'm getting a spam call right now. So if somebody does tell one of the agents, hey, don't call me anymore, what's stopping anybody from calling them again? My understanding of the TCPA laws, which is the Telephone Consumer Protection Act, which protects folks like myself from getting 20 or 30 calls a day, or should, is that if you tell Integrity, stop calling, that applies to Family First Life. It applies to Connection Point. It applies to all of their subsidiary companies, and it applies to their vendors as well. So any third-party company that's making calls for these companies that are hired to create these leads, if you tell that head company, don't call me anymore, that applies to that spider web of companies. And the inverse is true as well. So if I tell Senior Benefits not to call me, well, that applies to whoever they're calling to try to transfer you to. If you can't know who they actually are, how can you enforce that request not to be called?
Wes will put in the description all the relevant numbers, including the attorneys for Integrity Marketing and all these names that you're telling, so it'll be as clear as day. Let's do the general public a favor.
Yes, and to be clear too, I don't think, based on the interviews that I've seen your channel, based on my interactions for the most part, not everyone, but based on my interactions with the insurance agents themselves, they all seem like they're fairly nice people. They seem to understand that there's a problem whenever I tell them. They seem to also be concerned. I've had a few that just cuss at me and hang up on me for wasting their time. And I understand why, because they might have just spent $20 on that live lead transfer. So yeah, I'd be mad too. It's the vendor that they should be mad at. And it seems like there's really very little actually being done. I'm seeing several other people in the same shoes I'm in getting these same calls from FFL especially, or from vendors who will transfer calls to FFL or will sell callbacks to FFL despite being on do not call it and using these fake names. My understanding is it's a FTC's telemarketing sales rules. You have to say either your company name or who it is that you are calling on behalf of. And these guys are doing none of that. It makes it downright impossible to enforce a do not call request. And it makes much more sense as to why I believe there was an interview I was listening to today on your channel that was saying that nobody's putting the leads information into the lead. They're saying, Mrs. Jones doesn't want to hear from any of us anymore. Stop calling. They're getting these requests from the people that they're calling. They're kind of being screwed in this from what I'm hearing, because there's nothing in place that I know of that at least works, because I'm still getting the calls. There's nothing in place stopping these calls.
How long has these calls been happening?
Just in general, not just limited to Integrity Marketing. I started getting these calls, I believe, in March of last year. And it started kind of as a trickle. It was 1 or 2 calls a day. And they were from these same generic names. Tell them, stop calling me, stop calling me, stop calling me. I think I was several hundred calls in before I finally figured out there's something I can do about this. I can actually start suing people who call me. Once you tell them to stop, they have to stop. When you don't stop, it's opening yourself up to liability under the TCPA. There's different regulations in place. I believe it's 47 CFR subsection 227C, which says that you can't contact somebody more than once in a 12-month period if they tell you to stop. You're then opening yourself up to a minimum of $500 fine that can open itself up to treble damages of $1,500 per call if you call multiple times, if it's deemed a willful violation, which if you're calling somebody who's on the national do not call list, who's reached out to anybody and everybody that he can find, in your team, how is it not willful at that point when calls continue? So it's baffling to me. My most recent call was this month from FFL, or from an agent who I believe is with FFL. All I can get back from the attorneys are, we'll look into this and we'll let you know if we have something to report, was my last email from, I believe Jane was the one that wrote that to me, the attorney there. So
what is Jane's last name, if you recall?
Jane Rothman, who's their chief, she believes she's their chief legal counsel. She's their on-staff attorney. They also outsource some of their legal work to King and Spalding.
Are you saying most of the calls you're getting now are from?
It is impossible to know who they're actually from because they're giving you these fake names. They're telling you this is senior benefits, this is U.S. benefits, this is U.S. life. These companies don't exist under those names. The numbers that they're using don't exist, aren't registered to them. You can't call them back. There's nothing.
So you only know who's calling you if you've answered and you have a conversation that flows through to the actual agent.
Exactly. If you just ask them, and I've done this literally hundreds of times, if you just ask them, what's the real name of your company? Who is it that you're trying to transfer me to? You will be hung up on. I have yet to have anybody answer that question for me. They'll hang up on you. Hundreds of times I've tried this. They don't do it. It works to their advantage because anybody who's upset is never going to get transferred to a real company. There's nothing that's ever going to happen. So you have to play along.
How many times have you played along and spoken to the ultimate insurance agent?
For integrity, I believe I have either spoken to the actual agent or gotten through to somebody, or I have been able to, I believe, positively identify this as, this is the same call center that just called me a second ago. It's the same guy. He just said so. I believe 24 calls that I can contribute to integrity.
And that includes Family First Life?
Yes, that includes Family First Life. Family First Life is the bulk of the integrity calls. I believe that the other calls I received were maybe 5 other calls. So that would put us at 19 or so. What did I say? 24? Yeah. So 19 calls, I believe, are from FFL. I could be off by a little
Integrity, how many calls not from Integrity?
That I've actually been transferred to a real agent?
That you figure out it's not an Integrity Marketing Group company?
Dozens of them. I'm not at liberty to discuss too many of those because of just different agreements in place, but there are plenty.
The number you gave me was the Integrity/FFL.
Exactly. The 24 total calls I can attribute to at least having some ties to Integrity or some of their affiliated company. And I'm not entirely sure how the FFL structure works. It sounds like some of these agents are fairly independent and so maybe not real closely tied to Integrity. My understanding of the law is if you tell Integrity, stop calling me, that's going to apply to any of these other companies and any of these other agents involved.
If I was to guesstimate, the ones that are specifically for final expense are more likely to be Family First Life.
The Medicare calls, none of those, I don't believe any of those went to FFL. The Medicare calls, I believe Connection Point was who I was sent to on those. I've had, I think, 7 or 8 Medicare calls just today. Genetic testing calls today, elderly folks where Medicare is going to cover the whole cost of it. I think I've had 4 of those today, and we're still early in the day. They don't stop. If you're somebody who is signed up with Integrity, and one of the interviews that I listened to yesterday was saying that one of the FFL agents was following up on a lead that they had, and they were told, hey, you guys have called me, I think he said, you guys have called me hundreds of times. Why do you keep calling me? It would be my opinion that very likely it's that the vendor that initially called this person was using one of these very generic names. Senior Benefits is a big main fake name that's used. Probably using a name like that, they just now attribute Senior Benefits to FFL. And when they hear Senior Benefits mentioned on any call now, they're going to assume that's FFL. And that is part of why the offshore companies use names like that, because they could be calling for any number of other companies. And they know that using these fake names like that could put the blame on somebody else. They're going to confuse people. Anybody who's actually upset is going to have little to no recourse on it. There's nothing you can do unless you actually find out who it is that's called you. If I went to Integrity right now and said, I got a call from Senior Benefits, it's probably you guys, they would just laugh at me. They would know that there's no way to tie that call in with any other call that could come from Integrity. They should laugh at you for that because there is no way to do. They also will say, because you played along, there's nothing you can do. So it's a catch-22. Either it's Senior Benefits and you don't play along, therefore they are responsible, but you can't tie it back to them, or you play along to show that this is the company behind the call, but then you can't do anything about it. If I were an actual client of FFL and I were getting calls like that all the time, I'd be livid. If I thought that that was who was calling me every time, it's probably not. An older person, 70-something-year-old, maybe not real savvy on how all this works, probably absolutely believe it.
This could be the reason you're still getting so many calls, because you have flowed through dozens of calls.
Very likely. They see that I am a live lead, that I'll answer the call, and that they can transfer me to somebody industry. And if they can do that, in my understanding of the pay structure on those vendors, if we send you to the company we're working for or that's hired us, we're going to get $20 or however much that amount may be. I believe I've had one where they told me it was 50, but I don't know what normal is in that industry. They don't get their money unless they transfer you. They are willing to overlook any number of red flags in order to transfer you over and collect their money. And that seems to be very likely some of the issues that I would guess that the FFL agents are facing with these quote unquote bad leads. Who knows how they actually came in? They see the money signs, those dollar signs in their eyes, but I'm going to transfer this guy. I don't care. I'll transfer him. That's why they were asking me, do you have another number? Your number's on our do not call list. We can't call you, even though they're already on the phone with, give me another number. Give me another number. Do you have another number? Sure. Here's one. Great. Yeah, we'll call that. We'll send that over. They know that they can't call that. They know they can't transfer that. So they want another number to try to transfer you over because they want the money out of it. And if nobody's going to hold their feet to the fire, why not?
Number one, I do appreciate you publicizing what's happening to you. I understand you've had this telephone number for a decade. You don't want to give it up.
No, nor will I. Why would I? I'm not doing anything wrong. I'm answering my phone. If you're going to hire somebody and they're going to call my number illegally, all right, I will sue you. What else am I going to do? That's the only way for me to even think that I'm putting a dent in it. And if I'm getting these calls, how many other people are getting?
Have you initiated any legal action?
I cannot discuss some of that. I have protected my rights under the Telephone Consumer Protection Act. Yes.
I do highly recommend anyone who has any evidence to make Wes's claims stronger, please make a comment in the comment, and that may help you out in the witness category. You've been getting dozens and dozens of phone calls every day.
Every day.
Which
for a
is
year and a half.
Traumatic.
It makes it difficult to work. It makes it difficult because I work from home. I have my phone sitting here and it goes off all the time. You'll get calls at 6 a.m. Makes my wife really upset. When my phone starts ringing at 6, I have to put on do not disturb until she's out the door.
It's almost one of those systems that if it's happening to someone in your neighborhood, they talk about it. So it may not be happening to someone who's listening to Wes speak, but if you know someone who's happened to, please make a comment on this video. Wes happens to be in Illinois, the Chicago area. These type of situations can go to a trial, a jury trial. If you're within 100 miles radius of Chicago or in the general vicinity, even more so.
And it really doesn't matter where you're located. It's a nationwide, as long as you're in the U.S., the Telephone Consumer Protection Act, it's supposed to be there to protect you from these calls. Putting your number on the national do not call list is supposed to protect you for these calls, unless you opt in. There needs to be that if I've requested a call from somebody, I want to be able to receive that call, but it's so diluted in amongst all the spam. When my doctor calls me, I just assume immediately, here we go again, here's another spam call. No, this is actually somebody I want to speak to. Okay, my wife is 8.5 months pregnant, and now anytime I see a Chicago area code pop up, I think, well, it could be one of her coworkers saying she's gone into labor. I have to answer it. And I've had people tell me, just don't answer calls that you don't know. How many calls do we get that we don't know that aren't in our phone? May have a dentist, a doctor, your food delivery person, your lawn care person, any number of people that should be calling you would miss. And I've had spam calls that come from my dad's number. It's not him. It's somebody spoofing his number. And so you wouldn't be able to answer those calls either.
What are the penalties if the judge agrees that you're right and integrity marketing should be punished for their wrongdoing?
It could totally depend on whether it's deemed willful or accidental, whether they're held vicariously liable, which is something that they've adamantly denied that they are liable at all, because it's the vendors who they've said they're supposed to be following the law. If they were held liable, it would be something like anywhere from $500 to $1,500 per call made to me after requesting to stop. A fair sum of money that could be involved. To me, it's not as much about that. It's just, I've had them tell me, can you give us 6 months to try to make these calls stop? No, this is supposed to be something that can happen almost instantly.
It sounds like these Filipino call centers have your number and they're spread out everywhere, and integrity marketing is using them as a vendor.
Some are from the Philippines, some are from, I think one's been from Pakistan. There's Pakistan, India, and the Philippines are the main ones that end up calling me that I'm aware of. And then once they're told not to call me, okay, well, how can I still make a dime on this? I'll sell his data to somebody else.
And this guy
now I'm going to get calls from them. They know that my number costs them a little bit more to buy because they know that I'll answer, is what I've been told by some of the heads of those offshore companies who I've spoken to about the calls. They'll say, yeah, yours cost us a little bit more because it says here that you're active, you're live, you'll answer. But
Wes,
just put me as do not call.
We're publicizing this YouTube video on a play playlist that will be seen by thousands of people, possibly every attorney general in America from every state. The attorney generals will be looking at this playlist because I am encouraging people that got defrauded by Family First Life on lead fraud and release fraud. The gentleman from Texas, Mr. McKika, he mentioned stealing his whole downline. It's not very hard to explain what happened to you on these instances. Attorney General, State of California complaint, look it up, explain your story, similar to the Wolf of Wall Street. If you remember that scene where the attorney generals, I believe from the southern states, Alabama, Mississippi, and Arkansas, said, hey, you guys are ripping off our citizens, and they're complaining to the kazoo. The proper way to complain is the attorney general. If it's insurance related, copy and paste that to the Department of Insurance. I guess if it's labor related, to the Department of Labor. We live in a democracy. We're represented by state representatives as well as state senators. Copy and paste it to them as well. Gentleman from California did mention to me he got a referral from his attorney general that he should sue Family First Life. He got that referral in 14 days. I would imagine when word gets out how easy it is to punish wrongdoers, people will do it. The evidence that will be provided to these attorney generals will be the playlist that this video will be on. This interview will go live. The initial email that you sent me will be copied and pasted in the comment section. It's a pretty large email, so I don't believe I could put it in the description. It will be the first comment. They're going to know exactly what's coming up the pipe. Do you think that will stop these phone calls?
I'd like to think yes. I think that it may stop the calls to me or slow them down and maybe actually spread the word around FFL and those places. Hey, stop calling this guy. He's getting annoying. Please just stop calling him. We're tired of hearing from him too. He writes us an email after each one of these calls. Please stop. And hopefully that's what happens. That's what I want. I would like for my phone to ring whenever it's my family, whenever it's my friend, whenever my food's here. I'd love to just hear when my food's here. But no, instead it is constantly, hey, this is John from Senior Benefits. I wanted to talk to you about final expense insurance. Okay, hang up. 5 minutes later, it's John from Final Expense calling me again. It's constant. And if these attorneys general would put in more ability for us individual citizens to do something about these calls, I think that would be the biggest benefit to ending these calls, because there's very little incentive for these companies to actually stop. If you raise a fuss early on in the call, they're just going to hang up on you without subpoenaing your phone carrier and 6 or 7 other companies and groups along the way. You're never going to know who called you. You're never going to know who to tell to stop calling. You're never going to know, did they call you again?
Wes, it sounds like a catch-22 if I remember that book from high school. If you let the call go through, you'll find out who's doing this to you, but indirectly it'll cause you to get more phone calls.
Exactly. But you'll know who called you. But then again, you've got to play through again to find out, was that them calling me again, violating our agreement not to call me?
And that's how you get 30, 40, 50, 60 calls a day. What's the most calls you ever got in one day?
It was around open enrollment. It was around 90 calls in a day. And I think there was a text in there as well, which under the law counts as a call. But
Wes, are you trying to tell me you're becoming an expert on the language of insurance?
I know enough about insurance to actually kind of have an idea of what I'm talking about sometimes. Maybe that is a little bit of a benefit whenever I'm 30 years older and need to look for final expense insurance. So I'll have some idea of what's going on. That's still a little ways out for me. But I've got to be 65, and 64 is about the time that you should start calling. Weird facts that I should never know.
I have a feeling, based on this YouTube interview, there's a decent chance someone will be flying to the Philippines and scrubbing your name off this list. There is a possibility. The cost of the plane ticket to an executive or an attorney to fly to the Philippines will be a lot less than what it's going to cost them at any sort of trial or any sort of attorney general investigation. I do know that Integrity Marketing Group attorneys bill Integrity Marketing Group more than $1,200 per hour, which is a huge Achilles heel for any corporation. Again, I highly recommend anyone who's hearing this interview, please put your information in the comment section, and hopefully that will cause your phone to stop ringing. As well, I would recommend that you call my office at naaip.org. We could do these interviews all day. This could be the national interview center of people who are getting their lives ruined based on their phone ringing 90 times a day for no reason.
I'll give credit to their attorneys where it's due. They've at least said the right things. They've told me over the phone that they're working to try to push their affiliated companies, FFL and the likes of them, to use only US-based either call centers or marketing companies so that there is some accountability that can be done. Because the companies that they gave me, All-Star BPO and Agency Incline, though Agency Incline, I think, is in the US. Also, Lead Engine. As far as I know, they've not been able to get in touch with either. I think their attorney told me at one point for All Star and Agency Incline, I can't get them to answer me either, which is not good for using to get your leads. I mean, how many of those are bad? And how many didn't actually go through that were bad as well, that they may not have any idea about? Problem with using these fake names.
Part of the legal process is the discovery process. At one point in time, you'll be able to see the cash transfers from Integrity Marketing to these offshore companies.
I understand why they need to use some of these offshore centers. It's cheaper, it's easier, saves them time and effort. It makes sense, but I think that it needs to be done right, whether it's Integrity doing it or...
I have another reason why they're not using US-based companies. US-based workers can't appear at a local court and spill the bean. It's very hard for someone in Philippines to fly on some 18-hour plane when they don't have a passport.
And all they have to do is block your number. They're done with it. You know, you're never going to be able to serve them papers. So if they are using these offshore companies, an incentive of theirs could be that, what are you going to do? Okay, great. Serve them paperwork to appear in court for the TCPA. They're not going to show. Why would they? There are case laws in place that hold companies that hire these offshore centers, they hold them responsible for the calls. And that's myself and Integrity have disagreed. Is I think that they are responsible for the calls. They don't think that they are. And it's a matter of who the law supports.
Maybe I heard something I wasn't supposed to hear. You're telling me that Integrity Marketing lawyers are physically telling you that they're not responsible because it's someone offshore?
Not because it's someone offshore. They're not responsible because the company should have been following the law, but then also because I played along, therefore they're not responsible for this. Because you played along to find out who they actually are. As far as I know, there is no other good way to find out who's the responsible party in this other than playing along. Like I said, it's a catch-22 on this. Either play along and they're not responsible, or don't play along and you have no idea who they are. And you'll never know. And you'll never know, did they call you 10 times today or none?
I don't think this will be a difficult decision for the judge.
That's not what I want to do. I don't think that should be the goal of anybody in almost any situation. Your goal should be, it's these agents that you've talked to that think that there's fraud going on. That shouldn't be the goal. And that shouldn't be the goal of Integrity either. It's not my goal. My goal is to make them stop. Their goal should probably be for them to be made whole for whatever leads they bought. I'm in no position to really weigh in on that. Nobody wants to go to court, and nobody should want to do that. They should want to figure out a way for both parties to be happy. I'd love for me to know that I'm not going to get any more calls. Beginning of this month, I still don't know that because I'm still getting calls. I'm still get a text message from Mr. Williams, the same one that sent me the first FFL call with. I had a text from him maybe a week and a half ago. It's still coming. He had been given the leads again from Lead Engine, except this time they didn't give him any of his notes saying, don't call this guy anymore. They're still using the same vendors, or at least he is. I assume he's still with FFL, but I can't say for certain. I didn't ask. Just getting the calls to stop on my end would be...
On text messages, one could respond STOP. On phone calls that are coming from spoofed numbers, there's really nothing you could do.
Exactly. This was a text directly from him, from his cell phone, I believe, is what he said. He did give me an option to opt out in it, but my DNC request, my do not call request, was already in place. And the text message, I think, violates that DNC request because a text message under the law is still a call.
Plus, you're trying to build a case, and he's a decent guy, and you don't want to block him because he's a potential witness.
I'm not going to block him. Why is the onus on me? The onus should be on those companies. Don't call me. Don't call this guy. He said don't. That is what should be done, is just don't call him anymore. It should not be my responsibility to block him so that he cannot get in touch with me, or anybody, so they can't get in touch with me. It's like I said, when I've requested don't call, just follow that.
Family First Life at their convention in Miami, the Sean Mikey claimed that there were 12,000 insurance agents. So Mr. Williams is a small part of that 12,000.
It sounds like, from my speaking to especially Integrity, it sounds like they may be having some difficulty with just the size of it all and trying to spread things like, hey, don't call this guy, or we have to send that out to 12,000 different people. Don't call this guy. That's a heck of a task. But that is a task that it doesn't matter how large you are or how small you are, the law is the same for everybody. When somebody says stop, you stop. So it doesn't matter if you've got 12,000, 12, or 2 people. When somebody tells you stop calling them, you need to do that. And I think the law supports that.
Wes, I do appreciate you telling the world what happened. I highly encourage anyone who's encountering something similar as Wes to make comments, put your name, your telephone number, your city and state. It'll get over to Wes. If you want to email me, David@naaip.org, to forward that to Wes. I could do that. When Wes gets contacted from you based on the comment, you could always delete it afterwards. Let's end this nonsense.
Yeah, I doubt that I'm the only one going through it, but maybe I am. I can't say that I'm not the only one. I can't say that I am the only one.
If Congress made a law against it, you're probably not the only person.
No.
If there's multiple call centers in Philippines, Pakistan, in India who are doing this, you're not the only one.
And there's a way that they can do this all legally, and it's a-okay. But at least the calls coming to me, from my understanding, they're not doing it the correct way.
It sounds like integrity marketing is not on top of this. You're reaching out to the attorneys with these very well-written emails and conversations, is giving them fair warning that.
Yeah, and again, but then when you're pushed back and told that because you played along and found out they got the call transferred to them, then we're not responsible. Do I just send every single call your way, or how do we know? I would bet the call's not actually getting transferred to one of these companies. There's going to be no record with integrity.
I have to mention to insurance agents themselves, your job is to get in front of people. Your job is to close deals. If you're depending on a third party, which is a huge tech company that has a huge database of gullible insurance agents, that's from the book of very bad ideas. You have to be in control over your lead system, your business. This is your life. This is your business. If you outsource this to people from Pakistan, India, or Philippines, it's not going to work out.
I'd argue it can, but you should definitely find out how are they getting their lead. Is it a particular website? Because there needs to be an opt-in in writing, is my understanding of the law. That's how it should be. So how are they getting these? What website are people going to opt in? What percentage of the leads that you'd be getting are coming from that website? Take a look at the site. If it were me in that situation that's buying these leads, that's what I would want to know. Having been on this end of it is, where are they coming from? Where are you saying that they've opted in? And does that site look good? Does it look like a place somebody actually opted in?
No one really fills out so many forms.
No.
The reason why insurance agents are making a bucket load of money for every sale, because it's a hard job. It's not easy to get in contact with someone, get in front of people, collect a signature, collect a check. That's a hard job. If you outsource half that equation to a third party, it's not going to work out.
And you may not know what's going on. Very few of the companies that I've ended up speaking to in the end knew what was going on initially. Like I said, if you cause a fit, if you make a scene to somebody initially, they're just going to hang up on you, and they're never going to tell their client about it because that would hurt their reputation.
Integrity Marketing Group, the CEO is named Steve Young, the Football Hall of Famer. Let's ask your opinion. I know we get a little bit controversial when I ask your opinion. What is the chance that Integrity Marketing Group does not know what they're doing is illegal, in your opinion?
I don't know that I can totally answer that. There has not been any kind of a rule. Let's say this were to go to court, but I don't want that to happen. Let's say that it did, and a judge could very well rule. So it could be deemed.
Wes,
it's my opinion based on case law. It's not. That's not the case. But
we do have elections in November. Wes, you should be running for political office.
I only have one platform, and I think that it would be stop these calls.
90 calls in a day. That's your platform. Stop those 90 calls. Imagine it going down to only 5 calls. You would be like, hey, life is good.
I've spoken to people too where they've said, yeah, I get a lot of calls too. And I ask, well, how many do you get? And they said, well, I had 2 last week. What I would not give to have 2 calls, even in a day, that would just be amazing. I think I've had 4 now since I've been on the phone with you. Does it stop? And I don't think it will without.
It's not going to stop.
Unless
unless Integrity Marketing hops on a plane and visits these call centers, it's not stopped.
There are so many other, to be fair to Integrity as well, there are so many other companies that do this exact same thing. And I think that you can not know about what's going on because of that ability to kind of shield yourself, knowingly or not knowing. You can shield yourself with these third-party vendors who will hang up and end the calls before then. And just to give them the benefit of the doubt, because I don't want to say anything that I can't totally back up, unless somebody does play along, unless somebody does get to that end person and say, hey, look, this is what I was just told by your vendor. I was just told by your vendor that they're State Farm and you're not State Farm. Unless that happens, how would Mr. Williams ever know that that's going on? Unless he has access to those calls and he's listening into the recordings, if there's recordings, which opens up a potential other can of worms. Unless he's got some kind of insight into it, he's never going to know. And these call centers can easily kind of hide some of the more negative calls.
Integrity Marketing Group has a percentage of every insurance agent in America. They especially specialize in the lower level agents, not the financial advisors, but the final expense people, the mortgage protection type people. That's really their forte. If you look at the acquisitions they've made over the years, which include Family First Life, NAA, PHP the agency, this is definitely the lower end of the market. Sell leads to new agents that really don't know what they're doing before they go on to another business. The new agents are notorious for not realizing what's going on, supposedly buying an exclusive lead, which Family First Life has been telling people for years, and that lead is going to dozens and dozens. Actually, now that I think of it, it could be the people that are making the phone calls are selling the same data to multiple other people. I believe that's why you reached out to me.
That's kind of where I thought that our paths intersected. Was that I was listening to a bunch of the videos where your interviewees were saying, I was told that this was an exclusive lead. It wasn't. I can't speak to that. I have no idea what any of that background is other than just what the videos have said. If my story is true for other people, that could easily be the explanation. Let's say there's a handful of bad call centers that happen to have been employed or hired at some point by Integrity. If they get a good live lead in there,
they're going to transfer it. It could be the client is a little bit pissed off at the situation. If these a-holes, these jerks that are calling me 90 times a day, why don't I just make appointments for 90 of them so the lead will be worthless and I won't buy anything? And if I buy something, I'll cancel it a week later. Your life is you're a handsome guy, you beautiful wife, beautiful house. It's not raining inside your house. Life is relatively good. But getting 90 calls a day makes your life worse. And this could be your revenge by telling all these people, yep, come to my house.
I have heard of people doing that. Like I said, my goal is to make the call stop. And the only way that I know of to do that is to actually get through to the actual end licensed agent. My understanding of how the whole process works, again, not an insurance agent by any stretch of the imagination, never had any ties to that, is a payment made on any kind of live lead transfer, on any kind of callback. You're buying that data. That rate will fluctuate. There's no way for me to know who it is that's calling me without doing. I've spoken to many different insurance agents who are less than thrilled to get to speak to me. Once I let them know, hey, look, I don't have any interest in your insurance. I have interest in finding out who that was that you were using to call me. I've had them cuss me out and hang up on me and prank call me afterwards and do all sorts of stuff after the fact. I call me and threaten to kill me and come and rape me. It gets bad. When you play along, you mess with potential livelihood. I get why they'd be upset. From what I know, they're breaking the law in calling. Anytime that they call me at this point, it's breaking the law.
I certainly encourage Steve Young to stop playing golf for a couple of days and fly over to Philippines, Pakistan, and India and tell these companies not to do what they're doing or bring that whole operation to the continental United States.
It's going to be a little bit more expensive. I think, though, that if things are done correctly, I think it would benefit everybody. It would benefit those like myself who are getting the calls. I would probably stop getting folks who actually need the service. It would benefit them. It would benefit the agents in the end.
Based on the people I'm speaking to, the insurance agents that are buying these leads are, I don't want to say losers. At that particular stage of their life, they're portraying a loser. They're outsourcing their livelihood to a third party, which is a major high-tech company, has a major database of gullible insurance agents. They come in, they leave a couple of $1,000s shorter, they waste a couple of months of their life. In order to collect this couple of $1,000s off these new insurance agents, they have to supply something once in a while. So it is a game when they come into the industry to empty out their bank account a few $1,000s. According to the 30 people that I put on YouTube, and there's hundreds more that I've spoken to that I've yet to do a YouTube interview with. So it is a game. The former San Francisco 49er quarterback is profiting handsomely from this game, as well as Mr. Sean Mikey. I have to confirm this, but 3 people did tell me he has a private plane.
They should be in a business where they're making money, where they're doing well. As much of a fan of the Cowboys as I am, and as much as I hate the 49ers, I'd want Steve Young to be doing well and to be doing these things. But I think there are improvements that they should be making that would benefit every step on this run, would benefit from just some improvement. Again, it's not just Integrity. Hundreds of companies that do this exact same thing. There are thousands of these call centers that do this exact same thing. I think that if the agents would push back on this and really, kind of to your point, either do this themselves or be more scrupulous on how their leads are coming, then everybody would be.
Wes, I have to tell you, any agent that comes into this business and opens up his bank account to a lead company without being an expert on a product first is an idiot. So these are not intelligent people that are buying these leads. It's almost like dancing around the village where no one can see. The man with one eye is king.
Violating calls are just one piece of this, if those other stories are true as well.
And final expense insurance is geared to low income people who generally don't complain, people that do not go to the Department Department of Attorney General fill out a complaint form, people that don't know the law like you do. It could be that this interview, because every attorney general in the United States from the 50 states will be looking at this playlist, could be that this interview is what makes the difference, especially the comments that you're recommended to make below if this issue affects you.
I would be highly surprised. There was somebody who this didn't affect. I would be shocked, not just integrity, but just across the board. It's a spam call epidemic. There are billions of going on every year with calls like the ones that I've received where the guy's telling me that he's with Medicare, claiming to be Medicare. There's very little way to differentiate between that, which it turns out just spam, and a full scam. It just muddies the water for everybody who's doing legitimate business. When you've got these,
by the way,
callers
Wes, it is a scam. Believe me, it's a scam. It's a scam to the insurance agent, scam to the client. It's a scam to everyone except the people making money off the system, which is Integrity Marketing Group in the Filipino
call center. As soon as they get caught, they're changing their name. They're trying to at least go back to some of the same clients and vendors and things with a new name sometimes. And
as long as Integrity Marketing Group makes that wire transfer, it will continue.
I know of insurance companies who will hold off on sending the money. They'll pay, I think they pay for leads after the fact. When they get somebody who comes to them and says, hey, look, man, you've screwed up. Your guys have called me 7 times. We need to figure out why this is going on. They will withhold that payment until that lead vendor then works out an agreement with whoever that called person was. And that seems to help some when there's that incentive of, hey, I've got thousands of dollars on the line if I don't figure something out.
Based on your conversations with Integrity Marketing Group attorneys, it seems to me that they're client with this fraud system. They're knowledgeable about it, they know about it, and they don't want to stop it.
I can't totally speak to that. I have informed them of my experience. I don't know if others have informed them. I know of people who have had other FFL calls who have dealt with other attorneys, with other firms, who I think maybe just firms for that particular branch of FFL. So maybe, let's say FFL Alabama is a company. That may be an attorney just for that one, and they may not be reporting to Integrity. And if that's the case, well, I think Integrity probably needs to crack down on that, and they need to put a policy in place if it's not already and enforce it. If this happens, you need to tell us, because we need to then make sure that you are putting them on a DC list, that you are not going to call them again, that none of the rest of us are going to call them again either, because let's say Integrity FFL Alabama isn't going to call them. Well, what's to stop FFL Florida from calling them unless that information is passed along? And to interviewee's point, he said that things didn't seem to be getting put into the lead in the CRM. And so if that's the case, how are any of these other companies, any of the other FFL companies, how are they to know that maybe I was called by somebody and I said, don't call me anymore? How are they supposed to know if there's nothing being put in that is shared amongst the group? That needs to be resolved. It's got to be playing into leads that are being hit multiple times. Your interviewees have mentioned, of course, they're being hit multiple times. There's nothing being put in to stop anybody in the future from calling. So then they're going to get, that person who's getting all these calls is going to get more and more and more and more mad that I'm getting these calls and they just won't stop. Nothing that I do is making them stop. Nobody that I tell it. You have to assume, as the called person, when somebody says they're with FFL or whatever company, that must be a guy who speaks to this other FFL guy who speaks to this other FFL guy. They're all part of the same company. They must interact and speak and communicate.
I have to believe that these calls rising up to 90 per day, more and more all the time, I believe it's because you've had these pass through.
I would be shocked if that didn't at least play some role in it. But again, how do you stop it without playing through? Yeah, you can hang up on them.
There's really nothing. Sometimes you get lucky in life. This is a situation where you did not get lucky in life. We have to chalk that up as that. Hopefully this interview helped. Hopefully the people making comments will cause this situation to stop, specifically because we will have attorney generals from the 50 states looking at this playlist. Wes, we'll speak again.